State, call your first witness.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Counsel.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is David Rodriguez.
Spell your name for the court.
Rodriguez, last name.
Where do you work?
Ocala Police Department
How long have you been with the Ocala Police Department for?
since 2008.
What is your current assignment with the police department?
I'm a detective with the Investigative Service Bureau, Property Crimes.
How long have you been a property crimes detective for?
Almost 2 years.
Prior to being a property crimes detective, what other positions have you held with the Ocala Police Department?
I was a K-9 handler with the K-9 unit for almost 6 years.
Have you held any other positions?
Just patrol before that, and directed patrol after that.
I want to direct your attention back to September 13th of 2015. Do you remember that night?
Yes, sir.
Were you working?
Yes, sir.
What capacity were you working that night?
I was assigned to the directed patrol team, which is a street crimes task force.
Tell the jury what it is that you do if you go out on shift as part of the directed patrol.
We go after violent offenders that are known to our agency in the sheriff's office, street level drug crimes, violent crimes. We mostly do proactive patrol in areas that have been riddled with robberies and shootings and stabbings and so on. So we're mainly focused on proactive activity.
How many other people work on in a directed patrol unit?
There was 4 of us and a sergeant, so 5 total.
Now, since 2008, you said you've been with the Ocala Police Department.
Correct.
Have you come to be familiar with the city of Ocala and its layout?
Yes, sir.
May the record reflect I'm showing defense counsel what has been marked as State's Exhibit A.
And is it Nancy?
A. Alpha. Detective, I want to have you go ahead and take a look at what's been marked on State's Exhibit A. Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's an aerial view of Cloud 9, Murphy's Oyster Bar, what was formerly known as Murphy's Oyster Bar, South Pine, in about the 1900 block.
Okay. Now, in this photograph, can you describe how Cloud 9 appears?
This square right here, the empty parking lot, with the front door facing Pine Avenue.
Okay. And does this aerial photograph accurately depict the area around the Cloud 9 nightclub?
Yes, sir.
At this time, the state will move State's Exhibit A into evidence of State's Exhibit 1.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection.
State's Exhibit A for identification will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 1.
Now showing the defense what's been marked as State's Exhibit B. Detective Rodriguez, I'm now going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit B. Can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
A closer aerial view of the front door of Cloud 9. On the left side of the picture is South Pine Avenue, and on the top of the picture is going to be the parking lot.
Does this fairly accurately depict the area around the Cloud 9 nightclub?
Yes, sir.
This time the state will move State's Exhibit B into evidence of State's Exhibit 2.
Any objection?
No objection from Mr. Smith.
No objection, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit B for identification will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 2.
May the witness step down?
Yes, sir. And counsel, if you need to relocate to seat, feel free.
Detective Rodriguez, I'm going to start by putting State's Exhibit 1 on the easel. Can you go ahead and just generally orient the jury to what it is that they're looking at in this photograph and just make sure?
I apologize.
It's hard.
Reach as far as I can. So this right here is South Pine Avenue, 441 and 301 for most everyone.
the jury which direction this aerial shot shows.
North is going this way.
So upward.
Right.
And you tell the jury that traffic stopped run, right? Where did the traffic stop occur?
Right here on 19th Street, we're actually in the right eastbound lane, facing the four-foot.
Go ahead and show the United States. You go ahead and have you just describe for the jury generally what they're looking at.
This is a closer aerial view of the Paramedic establishment. This is the front door right here. And then this is the parking lot for the establishment. This is the pond where I mentioned earlier, over here would be McDonald's, Murphy's Oyster Bar would be in the northeast.
You see it. Now, shortly before that morning at 1:30, shortly before 1:30 that morning, did you become involved in a traffic stop?
Correct.
What was the nature of that traffic stop, if you recall?
It was for a traffic violation in a known drug and prostitution area. So, again, being proactive in that specific area.
And just generally, what was going on during that traffic stop?
We had already called for a K-9 unit to respond to our location while we were conducting the traffic stop. We were writing our paperwork out.
Who were the other officers who were with you that night?
Officer Hall, Officer Freed, and Sergeant Green.
Is that Michelle Green,
Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Hall,
Yes, sir.
and Joshua Freed?
Correct.
When you said you called for a K-9 unit, do you know which K-9 unit you called for or which arrived?
I know we called for a K-9 unit. I don't remember which one was on their way to us.
Did something happen during the traffic stop that took you away from the traffic stop?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
We heard gunshots or rapid succession gunfire within close proximity to our location.
Could you tell the jury if you know approximately how many gunshots you heard?
Without looking at the video, I guesstimated around 15 to 20 in rapid succession.
Could you tell from where you were what direction the gunfire was coming from?
Yes, sir. It would be if we were at our patrol car, unmarked car facing Pine, and it was coming from our right, which would be south.
And what businesses are in that direction?
Murphy's Oyster Bar, and then beyond that would be the Cloud9 establishment.
When you heard the gunfire, could you tell the jury what you did?
Once we heard the gunfire, we immediately got on the radio, notified dispatch that shots were being fired. Myself and Officer Hall then ran to the area of the gunfire.
How long did it take you to get there, do you know?
To which location?
Where did you ultimately end up?
I ultimately ended up coming around the south side of the business and then to the front door.
I can go ahead and have you step down again, Detective. These are the states that we show the jury.
So our cars are going to be facing the pond. I would say it's 15 minutes probably about right here where we're saying. So when we bring it on fire from this area, I ran through here to the parking lot, back behind our bar, this whole alleyway, into this whole alleyway, back behind Cloud9, and down.
When you got there, can you describe to the jury what the scene was like?
Chaotic. It's not something that we as police officers come in contact very often, so it was almost surreal if you think about it. Between You know, the gunfire, everybody's screaming, people are running in different directions. You know, there's people saying that somebody's still shooting, there are people injured. There's a lot of stuff that was going on at the time.
Are you able to estimate how many people were on scene as you were arriving there?
Several hundred, maybe 300 or so.
Now, it was you and perhaps five other officers on that traffic stop.
Yes, sir.
Was there any way for the four or five of you to contain that many people on the scene?
Absolutely not.
Were people leaving?
Yes, sir.
Did you see anybody there with injuries when you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Once after I went to the back and I made my approach, I came into the southeast corner, which is the closest corner point to the parking lot by the front door. And that's where I observed a male who was suffering from several gunshot wounds to his person, and he was being attended to by Officer Hall.
Did you see any other persons with injuries?
Yes, sir. Another one at the front door. Another male who was suffering from a gunshot wound.
Did you see anybody outside near the road who had suffered injury?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury about that?
A female was laying on the sidewalk just off the property line of Cloud 9, and she had a severe gunshot wound to the head.
Were any persons attending to her?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Officer Tuck and Officer Leggett.
Were there people around Tuck when he was attending to her?
Yes, sir. As the crowd, I guess, was exiting the establishment, they were encroaching on them, hindering them from doing any kind of life-saving rescue because they're more focused on getting them back so they could actually work. That's when I took a place as a security standpoint, so to speak, and in order to push the crowd back so they can continue working.
Do you wear a body camera?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what a body camera is and how they work.
A body camera is situated, for the most part, in the center of our chest. It accurately depicts and reflects the occurrences that happens with video and audio. And we activate it prior to any contact with citizens, and we don't turn it off until after the contact is concluded.
Were you wearing a body camera on September 13, 2015 during that traffic stop?
Yes, sir.
Were your actions that night and the things that you saw or the things the body camera captured and sound going on around you captured by that body camera?
Yes, sir.
It's a CD.
Thanks, Rodriguez. I'm handing what's been marked as State's Exhibit C. Can you take a look at that for me and tell me if you recognize it?
I do.
What is it?
It's a CD copy of my body camera video.
Is that an excerpt of the body camera, that video that you wore that night?
Correct.
Have you had an opportunity to view that video?
Yes, sir.
And how do you recognize that particular CD as having a video that you viewed and recognize as your body camera video?
Once I viewed it, I put my initials here at the bottom right-hand corner, along with the date.
And does what is depicted on that video fairly and accurately depict what your body camera captured on September 13, 2015?
Yes, sir.
This time the state will move State's Exhibit C to evidence in State's Exhibit 3.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection.
State's Exhibit C for identification will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 3.
All right, Detective Rodriguez, when you got to the front of the club, were you approached by a gentleman wearing a black shirt with white writing?
Yes, sir.
Did he speak to you?
Yes, sir.
Did he speak to you loudly, quietly? How did he approach you?
He was he approached me, but during our conversation it was really quiet. trying to keep the conversation between us instead of letting the surrounding people hear.
This time, Your Honor, the state would like to publish State's Exhibit 3 to the jury.
All right, you may. Members of the jury, you are about to view a video recording. The court instructs you that the recording has been edited to eliminate irrelevant portions that would not add to your understanding of the case. The fact that the recording has been edited should not concern you in any way and must not impact the way you view and consider this evidence.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes. The bench?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to deal with some logistical issues. There's been sort of a change in plan on how this video is going to be shown to you. It's going to take 15, perhaps 20 minutes to get that organized properly. We are at a reasonable time for the mid-morning break anyway. So if you would just please close your pads with your pens, leave them on your chairs. They'll be right there when you come back. Again, remember my admonitions. You're welcome to discuss the weather, sports, whatever you want to talk about, but do not discuss the case. All right? We'll be back with you in approximately 20 minutes. Mr. McCourt, you may proceed.
State now publish State's Exhibit C.
You may.
Where the shots come from? Are they in the trunk?
have no further questions for Detective Rodriguez.
Cross-examination, Mr. Gorman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Officer Rodriguez, you didn't witness the shooting at all, correct?
Correct, sir.
In fact, at the time that you heard the shots, other than it being from the south, you couldn't tell where the shots were from, correct? Okay. And I think if I observed on the video, when you were running up, you asked, were they in a car? Was it in a car? Were the shooters in a car or something to that effect? Is that accurate?
I asked where the shots were coming from and who was down.
Okay. It was a chaotic scene, nonetheless, out there, correct?
Correct.
You estimated about 300 people out there?
Yes, sir.
And that's people that are by the nightclub, people that are in the road, people that are around or surrounding the victims, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that group of people, you would agree with me, would you not? You had varying degrees of emotions.
Yes, sir.
All right. You had some people that were hysterical. Clearly, correct?
Yes, sir.
Clearly on the video, you also had some people that were angry at what was going on, correct?
If that's how you would interpret their emotions.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how they were feeling.
Very emotional,
Yes, sir.
loud,
Yes, sir.
argumentative, those kind of things?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in addition, this was people that were in a nightclub, and there were people that were obviously intoxicated out there. Would you agree with me?
Generally speaking, in a nightclub, you do consume alcoholic beverages.
Okay. And there were people out there that night that were exhibiting signs of intoxication, correct?
That I couldn't tell you.
Whether it be from their hysteria or their argumentativeness or their anger.
I mean, with the mixed emotions and everything like that, I mean, it's a very high likelihood that, alcohol had a contributing factor. But again, I couldn't tell you to be exact.
Okay. You were focused on, obviously, the victims, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hawthorne?
Good morning, Officer Rodriguez.
Good morning.
That was a pretty traumatic video, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
It's very tough for you that night, wasn't it?
It's one thing that we as police officers hate to go into. Yes, ma'am.
When you heard the shots, you ran around the back of the Cloud9 Club, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were yelling, was that your voice yelling, hands, hands?
Yes, ma'am.
Why were you doing that?
I don't know who the shooters were, and there's a massive amount of people that are flooding in my direction, so any of them could have been a shooter. So I needed to see their hands to see if they had a weapon of any sort, a gun.
We saw the visual on the body cam that was attached to your chest, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Your body cam's like an eyewitness, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So that camera is moving as your body is moving, correct?
As my body is moving, but not my head.
Okay. So at times, your body is turning in one direction and then shifting in another direction, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And with that, the body cam is capturing what is in front of your chest. Okay. So you've kind of got two cameras going. You've got your own eyes and your brain that's working, and then you have another device that's there recording. You don't know what that's recording at the time, do you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, it appeared that the back door was open to the club, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that it appeared that there were people in that back door.
Yes, ma'am.
Was it your voice that we heard shouting at them, where's it coming from, or where's the shots coming from, or is it in the club?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you were trying to determine where the shooters were, if they were still on site.
Correct.
Okay. You proceeded to run around it would have been the south side of the club, that parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you make any report afterwards about what you saw and what your body cam confirmed was going on?
Yes, ma'am.
You did write a report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And, around the back of the club, it appeared to be fairly quiet back there. I mean, there was some yelling and screaming. We heard your voice, but it wasn't as chaotic as the front of Cloud 9. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got around the front, it appeared to be just a melee of people, just running, moving, grabbing, pushing, shoving, yelling, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the person that you had that soft conversation with, the gentleman with wearing the black T-shirt with the white print,
Yes, ma'am.
did he wind up giving you his name?
I did not take his name.
Okay. And do you recall the type of car he described to you?
Chevy Malibu.
And what color?
I think it was light colored, like a light blue,
Okay.
4-door.
And did he tell you how many people he thought were in the car?
No, ma'am.
You don't recall him saying 4 guys?
Not without, reviewing everything. He knows that he saw the people who were shooting, and they left in a car.
Okay. All right. Now, if we re-watch the video at some point, or if you watch it at some point, and there's somebody saying 4 guys, would that be that person talking?
Could, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, but you didn't see any vehicle that fit that description?
No, ma'am.
And now, the video ended with someone yelling out Benitria's name? Ms. Robinson's name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was she close to where you were when that video ended?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, she was on the ground out in front of the club?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were there other people in front of the club? On the
From-
ground?
From the video, yes, ma'am. There was other people. There was a gentleman that was down in the doorway, the gentleman that was in that corner. Those are the only people, and the deceased that was behind me.
Okay. And that's not really apparent in your body cam?
Correct.
Okay. That's other information that you're giving to us right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it's part of the reason that it's not visible on the body cam because there was so much commotion and so many people moving through the area?
The body camera is affixed to one certain point of your body. So unless I'm sitting here and going down and doing this wherever my chest is moving, that's why it's difficult for the body camera to have captured everything.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bankowitz?
Thank you, Judge. When you were yelling hands, hands, did you actually see any weapons?
No, sir.
And can you guesstimate how many people were coming towards you?
Approximately 50, 60. They're coming from the alleyway and the back of the club from 2 different directions.
Okay. They weren't coming from the front door of the club where the shooting?
The alleyway is from the front door area. So you're going to come from the front door to the alleyway that splits Murphy's Oyster Bar and the entertainment establishment to where I am, and then the back door, and they kind of come at me at a V shape.
And the gentleman that Ms. Hawthorne talked about with the white lettering, was that a security person?
No, sir.
No?
Not that I know of.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Read. All right. Is the witness excused?
The excuse asked him to remain on standby throughout trial.
All right, you can step down. Call your next witness.
State calls Richard Tuck.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Absolutely. Ms. Kipke?
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Detective Richard Tuck with the Ocala Police Department.
How long have you been with the Ocala Police Department?
A little over 4 years.
And what is your current job title and duties?
I'm a District 2 property crimes detective, so I investigate auto burglaries, car thefts, arsons, stuff that's related to property crimes.
How long have you been a property crimes detective?
Since July.
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you had a different position in September of 2015, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What were you doing then?
I was a patrol officer
Okay. And how long were you a patrol officer with OPD?
for about 2.5 years, give or take.
Any other positions with the Ocala Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
What else have you done with them?
I've been a detective in the Criminal Intelligence Unit for a little over a year, and I've been assigned to some various violent crimes task force.
So were you on duty on September 13th, the early morning hours of September 13th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
In your patrol capacity?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you around 1:30 that morning?
Before the call came out, I was downtown on the square right over here. The bars were about to let out, so that's typically where we would kind of congregate and wait for the bar crowd to disperse.
Were you by yourself in your own patrol vehicle?
There were several other officers downtown, but I was by myself in my patrol car, yes, ma'am.
How many other units were downtown on the square along with you?
I don't know an exact number, but there was a couple. 2 or 3 maybe, I'm not quite sure.
As you mentioned previously, at some point in time, a call comes out over the radio, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And had the bars let out in the square at this point in time?
I don't believe so. I don't recall, but I believe it was about just after 1 or just before 1. And typically the bars wouldn't let out until about 1:30, 1:45. So not quite.
At the point in time that the call came out, what was the nature of the dispatch?
An officer got over the radio and said that there were shots fired at Cloud 9.
Okay, and what did you do in response to hearing that?
I ran to my patrol car, got in my car, turned my lights and sirens on, and drove as fast and safely as I could down to Cloud 9.
Okay, and where did you park your vehicle when you arrived at the club?
So when I pulled up, obviously there was a lot of traffic in front of Cloud 9, so I drove around the traffic and pulled I was still in the outside lane of South Pine, but I positioned my patrol car to point right kind of at the front door and entrance to the nightclub.
May the witness step down off the stand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Showing the jury what's been admitted as States 1, can you indicate the direction that you approached in your vehicle, the club?
So I would be heading south, so I'd be driving this direction, so this way.
Okay. And can you indicate on this diagram where you recall parking your vehicle?
It would have been right around here. Approximately.
Did you park on the road? Did you park up on the sidewalk? Can you describe how you left it?
It would have been in the roadway. I don't know if I pulled up partially onto the sidewalk, but I was in the outside lane, kind of pointed right at the front door.
What direction was the front of your vehicle on this diagram? Like, where was it pointing?
It would be kind of like at this angle. So kind of, I'm not sure if that's directly south, but if this was directly south, it would be kind of like a southwest direction.
Towards the front of the club?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What'd you do after you parked?
I grabbed one of my equipment bags and got out of my car and ran up into the crowd.
When you say equipment bags, what are you talking about?
They gave us, the police department, like a quick response bag, it kind of carries a various of items. And it's up to us kind of how we want to configure the bag. We can carry extra ammo, bandages, CPR mask, et cetera, stuff like that. Just like a kind of like a go bag, if you will. It just, you grab that and you're going to have essentials to deal with dangerous situations.
Okay. Can you describe to the jury what you see when you're getting out of your vehicle?
In layman's terms, absolute chaos. I got out of the car. There were multiple people in the parking lot by the road coming out of the nightclub. People were screaming, people were yelling. There were cars parked out in front in different directions. People were running in different directions. It was chaotic.
Did you see people that appeared to be injured to you?
As I ran up into the crowd, yes, ma'am.
Okay. One in particular?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that person?
Miss Robinson was laying outside the nightclub on the ground, kind of next to the sidewalk as it ran in front of the club, like on the asphalt, but right next to the sidewalk.
How close was she to your vehicle where you parked it?
Approximately maybe 20 to 30 feet, give or take.
When you see her, what do you do?
So she was crowded. There was a lot of people standing over her, yelling and screaming. So as I ran up, and she was the first victim that I came across. And as I ran up, there were other officers responding, but I was going to assist her. I started to give loud commands for people to back away as I put some gloves on to assess the situation.
Okay. What did you do when you got to Miss Robinson?
After I was able to kind of clear her from other people, I got down and I started to kind of assess her injuries.
Okay. And what did you do to assess her injuries?
I immediately noticed that she had, there was a lot of blood on the ground. There was a lot of blood coming from her mouth and her head area. I assessed to see if she had a pulse. I did find a pulse. And because of all of the blood that was coming out of her mouth, I rolled her into a recovery position, which is on her side, to kind of help drain that as I continued to assess.
Okay. What did you notice next after you moved her to on her side?
So I was trying to find out where all the blood was coming from, and I found one gunshot wound to the side of her head.
And what did you do after seeing the apparent gunshot wound?
There were other officers that were there at this point. They came quickly after I was there. I notified the other officers that she had a gunshot wound to the head and that I needed EMS now.
Did you attempt to perform any life-saving measures?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What did you do?
So while I was assessing her, I noticed that her pulse went away. So I announced that I was going to do CPR. I rolled her back over onto her back, and I started to do chest compressions.
Were you asking for any additional equipment to help you do CPR?
Yes, ma'am. My CPR mask was not in this bag. It was in a different bag in my car. So I asked, it was Lieutenant Bianco, to go to my car and to get my backpack out of the car and bring it to me.
Okay. Did that happen?
Yes, ma'am.
Who all assisted you with performing CPR on Miss Robinson?
So Lieutenant Bianco brought me the bag. I handed the CPR mask to Sergeant Vizzini, who was standing over me, or behind me, kind of doing some crowd control. He started to do respirations, providing air to Miss Robinson as I was doing chest compressions. Something happened. I don't know. I don't know if the mouthpiece off of the mask fell off, but I guess it was contaminated by some blood. So I continued to do chest compressions. And then another female, I don't know who she was, showed up. I guess said she was a nurse, and she started to do air respiratory while I continued to do compressions.
Eventually, did medics arrive?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Did they come to where you were with Ms. Robinson?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
What happened at that point?
Well, before they arrived, I got tired, and Lieutenant Bianco switched out with me to do chest compressions. And then so I kind of stood up, I walked into the roadway to try to get to direct EMS. And so when they came in, they immediately started to render aid to Ms. Robinson.
Eventually, did someone pronounce her deceased at the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened after that point?
So one of the medics or fire department personnel, they pronounced her deceased. They got up. I was trying to get the information from them, but it was so chaotic. He's like, you're going to have to get it later. And someone told me to grab a sheet and place the sheet over Ms. Robinson.
Were you wearing a body camera that night?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And did you activate it at some particular point?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Do you recall when you activated it?
It was like right after I got, it was very easy, just swipe them down and they turn on. That was the old model we had. And so it was just a habit. Anytime I got into a car or my patrol car and was running in emergency mode, lights and sirens, it was just immediate. So it was shortly after getting into the car downtown.
Okay. Did you also have an in-car camera that early morning?
Yes, ma'am.
And where is that mounted in your vehicle?
Right in the dash, somewhere along behind or beside the rearview mirror. So it's right there. It captures everything in front of the car.
How is that activated?
The cars are designed that as soon as you turn the lights on, it automatically turns on, and there's some type of backfeed where it's constantly recording. So when you turn it on, it saves like the last so many seconds, so it catches sometime before you turn it on, and then when it reaches that point, it turns on the audio as well.
So when you say lights, you're talking about the emergency lights on your patrol vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that activated based on how you came to the scene that early morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing for the record, defense was been marked for identification as states D and E. I'll start first with states D. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is it?
It's the video from my body camera from that night.
And have you reviewed this video?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
And how do you know that you reviewed it?
Because after I reviewed it, I initialed it, I put my ID number and the date that I reviewed it.
Upon reviewing this, and this is a portion of your body camera that night, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it a fair and accurate representation of some of what your body camera captured on the early morning of September 13th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would admit into evidence states D as states 4.
Any objection?
No objection, please.
No objection.
No objection.
State's Exhibit D for identification will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 4.
Next, states E for identification. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
That's a DVD of the video of my in-car video from that night.
And again, like the body cam video, it's an excerpt from that in-car video, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you reviewed this video?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that you've reviewed it?
Because after I reviewed it, I initialed it, put my ID number and the date that I reviewed it.
Is this video a fair and accurate representation of a portion of what your in-car camera captured on the early morning of September 13th of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would move states E into evidence as states 5.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
No.
No, Your Honor.
All right. State's Exhibit E for identification will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 5.
Permission to publish states 4 and states 5 to the jury.
Yes, ma'am, you may. And members of the jury, again, you are about to view a video recording, actually 2 video recordings. The court instructs you that the recordings have been edited to eliminate irrelevant portions that would not add to your understanding of the case. The fact that the recordings have been edited should not concern you in any way and must not impact the way you view and consider this evidence.
further questions of the detective.
Mr. Gorley?
Officer Tuck, when I was hearing your body cam video, I heard several mentions about a white Mitsubishi. That wasn't you making those statements, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, that was on the radio from what other officers were doing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you took that they were in pursuit of a white Mitsubishi that was related to this shooting in some way, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the position of Miss Robinson's body was partly in the grass and partly in the sidewalk closer to 441, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you tell from when you got there whether or not that body had been moved in any way?
No, sir.
Did you see any type of blood trail or anything that she had been in a different position when she was shot?
No, sir. There was a lot of blood on the ground. I wasn't looking for a trail. I was looking at how to save her life. So.
The area where all the blood was, where she was lying, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Under her.
And other than you moving the body for CPR, you would agree with me that it's probably the spot that she was at when she was struck by the bullet?
I would assume so.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hawthorne?
You got there about 1:32 a.m.?
Approximately, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at about 1:35, didn't it start raining?
I don't recall. There may have been, but I don't recall.
Okay. And you started compressions about 1:36 a.m.
If that's what the video showed, then yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at 1:42, it looks like that's when you got tired and traded off and had another officer take over for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What did you do at that point after you stepped away from Miss Robinson?
I was winded. I didn't realize I was shouting so loud. You know, my adrenaline was going. So, as the video shows, I sit back. I'm still sitting there with the other officers. I eventually get up, and when I do, I go out to the roadway to direct the ambulance to come in. That's the video you heard. Someone shouting, "Right here, right here, right here." That was me with my flashlight directing at the ambulance.
Okay. It looked like the first EMS on scene wasn't there until 1:43.
Yes, ma'am.
Were they kept back from the scene because of security reasons, or did they just not get there until 1:43?
I don't know the circumstances on the time it took EMS to get there. In my experiences, when we've got dangerous situations where the scene is not clear, EMS doesn't just run into the scene, obviously, because if they become hurt, then it's more problem than solution. In the video, when I'm telling other officers that I need EMS hot, at one point I do say, and I heard it in the video, tell them that it's clear, because I needed EMS right then and there. So, to bluntly answer your question, I don't know why it took that long, but those are the circumstances why it could have taken that long, if that makes sense.
The nurse that came over and began assisting, giving the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, do you know why she wasn't allowed to come over and assist before that moment?
I don't know where she came from. I don't know if she was held back. She arrived and provided assistance with us.
Okay. After you went and got the sheet, what else did you do after that evening?
At that point, I kind of walked around to see if anyone else needed assistance, but I was instructed to stay with Miss Robinson as kind of scene security, make sure no one kind of came up, because once I laid the sheet, we had to preserve that evidence as best we could.
And I noticed that there appeared to be a deputy walking with a camera, may have been a crime scene person?
There were several people. One of our crime scene technicians was there. Theirs eventually showed up. There was a lot of personnel on scene. Yes,
And then I saw that there was someone putting up the tape.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. How long were you out on scene?
I was there for a while. My car was kind of tied into the crime scene. There was some blood on my car that, you know, I couldn't just drive away. I had blood on my pant leg that I actually had to cut off one of my pant legs on the scene to prevent contamination because my knee got scraped while I was doing compressions. I didn't want to have a contamination there. So I was there for quite a while.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bankowitz,
No additional questions, Judge.
is witness excused, or is there any redirect? I'm sorry.
No redirect, Your Honor, but we'd ask to have him remain standby. He's excused.
All right, thank you. Council approach.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
My name is Dylan Lawson, Dillon, Lawson. I'm a firefighter paramedic for the City of Ocala Fire Rescue.
How long have you been a firefighter paramedic with the City of Ocala?
I've been a firefighter for the city for over 5 years and a paramedic for about 2.5 years.
What type of training do you get to have both of those positions with Ocala Fire Rescue?
The EMT part of the training is approximately 3 months, and the paramedic is an additional year of training at a college, and the fire academy is approximately 6 months at the Florida State Fire College.
Were you on duty or on call the early morning of September 13th of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you one of the units that was called to respond to a shooting that occurred at the Cloud9 nightclub?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you when your unit got that call?
We were at our station. We were in our dorm sleeping.
Do you recall approximately what time you got dispatched to the scene?
It was early morning, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I believe.
Okay. And how many units from your station left and went there?
Both of the units from my station.
Okay. How many people are on what type of transportation did you go to the scene in?
Okay, I was on the engine. I was the rear firefighter, and then I had a captain in the front seat and a driver operating that engine, and our rescue unit also responded with 2 personnel.
Okay. The rescue unit would be an ambulance?
No, ma'am, we do not transport. There was additional units from another agency coming for that.
So 1 fire truck and a rescue unit. What is the difference between the 2?
We call it a quick response unit. It has everything we need on it. We just don't have transport capabilities.
How long approximately did it take you to get there?
I would say under 3 minutes.
Okay. And where is your station located in relation to the club?
Martin Luther King and 200. State Road 200.
What were you driving the fire engine?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Okay. You were on the back, correct?
I was in the back seat, yes, ma'am.
And where did the fire engine that you were in park?
We parked directly on Pine in front of the nightclub.
Were there any other vehicles out there that you saw when you arrived?
No, ma'am.
Did you see describe to the jury what you saw when you pulled up in the engine and got out?
Okay, as we were driving down Pine, there were multiple people running down the sidewalks, running down the roads. We pulled up. I got out of the right door, which is the approaching side of the facility. And as I got out, I noticed there was a victim or a patient laying on the ground right there. I immediately went to the rear compartment on that same side of the truck, proceeded to get my medical equipment out and tend to that patient.
Okay. What is triage?
So triage is where we start to assess the severity of that patient, whether they're going to be a rapid transport, can we stabilize them there, and their critical level of what we need to do. Also, the number of patients per units we have responding.
So when you get out of your engine, what are you doing as a paramedic?
I was initially analyzing the scene. I noticed a patient directly in front of me, but I also knew there was other patients due to the radio traffic while I was responding. We had reports of multiple patients.
Okay. So you see the first person, and what do you do when you see the first person that catches your attention that may be injured?
I initially went up to her, checked her responsiveness. She was completely unresponsive at that time. I started to do a rapid head-to-toe assessment. It was dark, so I'm trying to look for any obvious injuries at that time. There was some pooling of blood around the head region. I initially take my cardiac monitor with 2 quick pads, which is the chest and the side, and that's going to give me a baseline rhythm off the bat. It was a systole, which is a flat heart rate, no heart rhythm at all. And then we further investigation on the head to toe noticed there was a head wound, and we pronounced at that scene and moved on to the next patient. Due to rapid triage, we did not have enough resources due to the number of victims at that time. So.
Before you enter a scene like the one that you entered that early morning, does your engine have to be cleared? Does your personnel have to be cleared to enter that scene?
Yes, ma'am. While we were responding, they did announce that the scene was secured by law enforcement, and we were cleared to come in, and we proceeded in.
Okay, so that call, that message was received before you actually got there?
That's correct, over radio traffic. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what's the purpose of that for you, that the scene is clear?
To ensure our safety, because we are not armed, to secure ourselves, so they make sure law enforcement's present and the scene is secure for us to proceed.
The first patient that you went over and just described assessing, was anybody attending to her prior to you getting to her?
I can't recall specifically, no, ma'am.
Were there people around her?
There were law enforcement on scene. I do recall some crowd control being taken, and there was a lot of civilian bodies on scene. It was a very chaotic scene.
So after that female was pronounced dead, where did you go next?
My focus turned to the left at Mary County Fire Rescue Ambulance Unit, who also has 2 paramedics on it, or a paramedic EMTA. We're treating a patient at the front door of the club, so I initially went over to see what I needed to do to help them with that patient.
And from that point on, were you there assisting Marion County Fire Rescue?
Yes, ma'am. The paramedic from Marion County Fire Rescue took lead on that patient. We assisted in loading him. We rapidly loaded the patient into the ambulance. I jumped in the back, and we took off to the nearest trauma center, which is a half a mile away.
So you rode with Marion County Fire Rescue with the transport of one individual?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Male or female?
A male patient.
Okay. And where did he appear to be injured?
It appeared that he had a wound in the chest, entry and or exit wound in the chest and back.
No further questions.
Rolly,
No questions, Your Honor.
No question.
No questions.
witness excused? All right, you can go about your business, sir. Thank you.
Sir, you have a good day.
Call your next witness.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Have a seat.
Good morning, miss. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter?
My name is Ashley Vidos. My last name is V as in Victor, I, D as in Delta, O, T as in Tango.
Where do you work?
At the Marion County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been there for?
I've been there since July of 2012.
Tell the jury what your position is with the sheriff's office.
I'm a forensic DNA technician.
What do you do as a forensic DNA technician?
I screen items of evidence for the presence of biological fluids such as blood, semen, saliva, hair, touch, wear, DNA, and I'm also cross-trained in crime scene.
Now, I want to kind of focus on the crime scene portion of what you do. What do you do as a crime scene officer?
I document scenes by taking photographs, taking notes, taking samples, touch swabs, repackaging those swabs and sending them off to FDLE.
And you're responsible also for the collection of evidence?
Correct.
I want to direct your attention back to September 15th of 2015. Were you working that day?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to go to the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury where the medical examiner's office is located?
It's located in Leesburg, Florida.
Why did you go there that day?
I was asked to go by my lieutenant at the time to collect items of evidence from the medical examiner's office.
Did you do that?
Yes.
Did the record reflect on showing the defense was the market states exhibit G and H? want to go ahead and first name was marked as State's Exhibit G. Can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the projectile the medical examiner released to me from the right neck of Benicio Robinson.
And how do you recognize that item as containing that?
My initials are on the package as well as the date I collected it, the description of what's in here, and the case number and item number.
Now, when you actually collect the packaging from the medical examiner, is the item contained within a smaller package?
Yes.
Let me go ahead, if I could, and have you open State's Exhibit G.
Do you recognize that item within State's, the larger envelope?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the packaging that the medical examiner handed to me.
And how do you recognize it as being that?
I didn't mark anything on it, but I just put it into this package with that same description that's on the outside of the package.
Does that package appear to be in the same or substantially similar condition to when you collected it?
Yes.
And what about the larger package?
Yes, other than FDLE. Yes.
And is it common for items of evidence such as projectiles to be sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for further analysis?
Yes.
You can go ahead, Ms. Vidos, take a look at State's Exhibit H. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
What is it?
A projectile from the left scalp of Benicio Robinson.
How do you recognize that item?
With the case number, item number, my initials, the description from the package, and that's pretty much it.
And does that package appear to be in the same or substantially similar condition to when you placed it into evidence?
Yes.
And when you collected that item, was it like State's Exhibit G also contained within a smaller envelope that you then put into that larger envelope?
Correct.
Go ahead and open up the envelope there.
You recognize that item?
Yes.
What is it?
It is the projectile from the left scalp that the medical examiner gave me.
And does that item appear to be in the same or substantially similar condition as when you collected it?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Judge.
Witness excused.
Yes, sir, I'd ask that you just remain on standby.
All right, you can step down.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been advised that your lunch has arrived. So in the event someone ordered something hot, this will be your best opportunity to actually eat it the way it was intended. Again, close your pads, leave them on your chairs. We will be in recess until approximately 1 o'clock, maybe a little bit after. I want to give you plenty of time to be able to eat and maybe stretch your legs a little bit. We can accommodate that. There are 2 groups of you, so we'll have to do that in stages. But at any rate, please remember my admonitions about not discussing the case and enjoy your lunch.